So in chapter 7, we are primarily going to be talking about safety and security. So safety and security, those are two different things. What is the difference between safety and security?
Safety prevents, security, it's, keeping things in your control.
Okay, so safety is kind of prevention or in kind of an emergency situation. Security, think about assets and belongings. Okay, so security, we're trying to make things secure so people don't have access. Like that video we watched and that guy just walks out with the laptop. That was not part of the security process to just to give anybody a key. Yeah, it is, absolutely. And so we have two different programs. We have a safety program that deals with natural disasters or emergency situations. And then we have our security program, okay? And so things that are part of our security program, of course, our doors, locks, keys, control. The security that's within the guest room, we're gonna go through each one of these. The different people that we allow on premise, right? Sometimes that's hard to control, but we'll talk about how we can do that. The different, the perimeter, the parking lots, the grounds that we have out of our hotel, the assets that we have, like our amenities, our sheets, our linens, our towels, all those protections of those assets. And then we'll talk about emergency procedures, communications, and security records. Okay, so the doors, locks, key control, and access control. So y'all realize, I don't know if y'all realize this or not, when we went to the Fairfield, and Michelle, what did she do every time she knocked on the door before she went into the room? She announces who she is, okay? We're announcing that we're coming in. We always want to announce because we don't know if somebody's in there. That key that she has is probably programmed for the specific, what they call showrooms, okay? So oftentimes the sales office, if there's availability, the hotel is not sold out, the sales office would get showrooms that if somebody's coming to the hotel, a potential client, a potential group, then they can actually go and take them to the rooms. They can see what a king room looks like. They can see what a double queen looks like. And so they'll have those keys that are actually programmed. Every time we swipe that key, it makes a digital record, an electronic record of every time that key is swiped. Why do you think that's important to have that digital record?
Because if something happens, they can go back and say, hey, this room was accessed at this time.
Okay. What's like an example of something specific that might have, like a complaint that might come up? Yes.
Someone took your key and they went to the room at a certain time of day and you weren't there.
Okay, so if you lost your key, okay, if you notice that you lost your key, hopefully the first thing you do is go to the front desk and replace that key. If they do a replacement key, oftentimes that electronic system will cancel out every other key that has already been issued for that. Because oftentimes our keys are designated for the specific reservation time, the check-in, check-out date. And then after that specific time, that key no longer works to open that lock, okay? That's why sometimes, like, if I forgot my key in my room, then the front desk can reprogram an additional key and they can duplicate it and not reprogram it completely. If they reprogram that one completely, then my other key that's in the room is no longer valid, okay? And so I might duplicate it instead of, and that's a process we need to do we need to make sure our front desk understand the difference between those two things, because otherwise you're gonna have guests that are pretty upset, because then our keys typically look identical. So they're not gonna know which key is the active one and which one's not. Okay. The other thing is, if somebody comes and says the housekeeper stole my laptop, well, you can actually go back to that record and say our housekeeper has not been in this room. Here's the electronic record of people who have accessed this room. So this housekeeper has not been in that room today, or I don't know, whatever. We can show that digital footprint of who has entered that room. Okay. So we have a couple of different types of keys, and so let's talk about those different types of keys here. What do you think the individual room key does? Gets you into that one room, okay? So if I have a key to room 323, That key is only going to work in 323 and common areas, the public spaces, like the pool, the fitness center, things like that. We're going to control access to those places, okay? What do you think the section master key does? Who would use a section master key?
Supervisors, managers.
Supervisors and managers and
Housekeepers.
housekeepers, okay? Housekeepers are going to use that section master key. So if I'm a housekeeper and I have this specific section of rooms to clean, then that key is only going to get me into those specific rooms that I am assigned to do that day, okay? The floor master key will open any room on a particular floor. The building master key will open up any room in the any room in the hotel. The grand master key will then also give you access to those storage places or any kind of equipment rooms that not necessarily everybody needs to have access to. And what do you think the E key does? Emergency key. So if we ever need to access something in the case of an emergency, when everything else is shutting down, we have access, we have the use of that E key. What happens if the grand master key goes missing? Everything has to be rekeyed. Everything has to be rekeyed. And so at the La Quinta, when I worked there, you had to sign out that master key or a floor key or whatever. If you were the manager on duty, you actually had to sign it out. Somebody had to witness you signing it out. And then when you returned it, somebody had to witness and sign that you returned that key. Now they were on those little like spiral armband things. So it was so easy for people just to walk out the door and walk home with that key. If we're without that key, then, that's not a good thing. And so, so we want to make sure that those are updated as well on a periodic basis, okay? Especially if they're ever lost. It is, I don't even want to think about that. The other thing is, so I did a wedding last weekend at the Hotel Valencia. I was the coordinator. The groom was getting ready on the 12th floor. The bride was on the 3rd floor, which is where the courtyard was. And so there was no reason for me to have a key except when I had to go talk to the groom on the 12th floor, because their elevators, they have access. You have to use your key to get access to the floors above the 3rd floor. And so the front desk had to actually create a key for me that would only work in the elevator. It wouldn't open any single room. It was just something that was activated so that if I needed to go to the 12th floor, I could. And that key was only programmed for the time that I was going to be there. There was something else I was going to say. Oh, my friend Shelly, who is I think she's the catering manager at Valencia. Her phone case has almost like a fob built into it. And that fob is what she uses as the employee of there. So I don't know if that fob is programmable for specific rooms or if it's just to get access. I don't know how that works. I can ask her and see how that works, if they program showrooms into that or not. But yeah, so it's actually in her phone case that's provided by the company that has a little white key fob type deal on it that a lot of hotels are going to wristbands now, that you can just touch the door of the employees have that wristband. And so technology is increasing, but the principle behind it is still the same. It keeps that digital record of every time somebody is accessing. Yes.
You were saying that the Grandmaster key back then was usually just like a little spiral thing.
Usually the master key, the building master key.
Okay.
The grand master key is with the general manager typically.
Okay. What happens if an employee takes that building master key, like you said, it was just like a wristband or thing, and they take it home, and even though they bring it back, does it still have to get rekeyed?
Well, no, because I think at the La Quinta, I think we had 4 master keys. So the executive housekeeper would have one, I think the manager on duty would have one, and they would sign out the specific numbered key. So if I'm key number 1, it's on the log that I have key number 1. So if I go to get the key and key number 1 is missing, and I go back and look, and it's like, oh, well, she has the key still, I can call her and say, hey, did you walk out with the key? And she can say, yes, I have it. I'm still in my possession. I'll bring it back with me to work tomorrow.
It's not something that's controlled, or say a shift change, like you pass it to the person relieving you.
No, it's typically checked into the box. At least that's the way it was when I was at La Quinta. It was checked in at the front desk, and so it wasn't a physical handoff to somebody. It's just when the executive housekeeper left for the day, they would return that key to the front desk. Yeah.
That seems like something you want at shift change, not.
Right. You want to make sure that it's there. Absolutely. Before somebody leaves. All right. So inside the guest room, so we have guest security. Of course, we have a peephole so we can see, what's outside the room before we open the door. One of the biggest indicators, other than the doorbell that's on the outside, one of the other biggest indicators for an ADA room is the additional peephole and a little bit lower on the door. So if somebody's in a wheelchair, they still have access. Maybe it's not that low. There we go. Okay. But they still have access to be able to identify somebody who's outside the door. Okay. So that's a security measure to keep the guests safe. Of course, our hallways should be lit. They should not be dark. For safety and security reasons. I think I told y'all about the hotel in San Francisco that I went to. The power was going to be cut off at 2 o'clock in the morning and was not going to be restored until I think it was like 7 or 8 and maybe even 10 o'clock. And so, of course, well before the sun comes up, the power was going to be cut. So they actually lined the hallway with glow sticks so that every about 5 feet so that you could actually see where you're going to make sure. Other things to make sure as far as safety and security or safety in the hallways is to make sure that our in-room dining guests or trays are picked up on a timely manner. Okay, and so there's stories of homeless people that have access up to the higher floors prior to the days when you had to have a key to access higher floors, and they would eat the food that's left on the room service tray that's out in the hallway, or even kids of guests, other guests, or whoever might go over and grab that food and start eating it. Well, there's no telling how long that food's been sitting there. Okay, and so we all know from sanitation and safety, what's the max time limit? 4 hours. Okay. Also, it's just the fact that somebody else had been eating that food. You don't know what other things that are wrong with that, and so.
If you're homeless, all that goes out.
No, absolutely. I get that. Yes. No. I get that. I understand that. But at the same time, we need to make sure that as a concerned citizen, that we're not putting people intentionally, we're not putting them in harm. No, I completely understand that. Okay. Telephones are important for guest room safety, so they can either call for help or we can call the room to notify them of anything. Okay. Let's see. People on the premise, so people on in the hotel. Okay. We have to make sure that people that are there are there for a reason, that they are a guest of the hotel. Maybe they are going to eat in our restaurant, but they have a specific purpose for being there. They're not just wandering the halls. And so we want to make sure that, it's private property, that people can be excluded if they are not there as a guest or, someone who's attending an event at our conference space or things like that. And so if you see somebody kind of wandering aimlessly through your hotels, you have security cameras, you have camera systems, you have security officers that walk the property. When I was at the Sheraton Gunther Hotel, the security officer basically would start at the top floor and he'd walk the square, you go to the 11th floor, and you walk, and you go down one floor and just walk, and you do that every so often to make sure that there weren't people just hanging out in the hallways that shouldn't be there. And so if you see someone wandering on aimlessly, your security officer can ask, can I help you find something? And that they can ask some questions to figure out, do they actually belong here, or do they need to be asked to leave the property? Jacqueline.
Well, this is just at our hotel. I don't know if it applies for other hotels, but our security is so high. Even if you're employed while you're not working, you're not allowed on premises.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Some hotels have that policy.
I found that out accidentally when I was walking on the river. I was like, can you go to the bathroom? I don't know. Upstairs, and then security's like, sorry, Jeff, you can't be here. I was like, oh, I'll be out. I'm leaving.
Absolutely. Yeah.
No, I can't go on far.
So of course we have cameras that we can monitor specific areas of the hotel, whether that's the outside, whether we're walking the property. Sometimes it's good just to have that visual presence. And so our security and our safety programs can be, we can look at past information or past incidences. So if there's a high incident of vehicle break-ins in our parking lot, then maybe we need to create a program where we monitor the parking lot more regularly. And so we can look at past occurrences. We can also look at the crime rate in the region around us to figure out what type of security and safety program do we need to have, and what kind of we have to put in place.
And that really comes in handy because like my cousin's work trailer got stolen from he parked on the side of the apartments where I live at. And when I got there that evening, the trailer was there. But when they got there 2 hours later, the trailer was not there anymore. And the bakery that's right across the street from us has a camera, so we went to go ask, would you all be able to pull the video? They're like, oh, we just have it there just to show. And I'm like, really? Like,
so if you have it, you want to make sure that it's operational.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
They actually sell ones that don't work.
Yeah.
For a fraction of the cost, or just for deterrence.
Right.
They'll even have the red blinking light.
Mm-hmm.
They're not recording anything.
Did you have a question, Anna? No. Okay, sorry. I thought I saw your hand. If we have a pool that's in the outdoor area, it needs to be controlled access. It needs to be gated. There's so many in the legal issues course. You might hear about a lot of different examples of people who have snuck into hotel pools and then they get injured and they sue the hotel. And so you want to make sure that you control that access as best as possible. Okay, so whether that's with the room key, even so, I was at the this past summer in Houston. I went to a conference and I stayed at the Marriott Marquis Hotel, the brand new one. They're giant on the 6th floor in the Marriott Marquis in Houston.
Oh, okay.
It's right by the convention center. On the 6th floor, the roof of the 6th floor has a giant Texas-shaped lazy river, and then there's like all these chairs inside, and there's a adult-only pool, but there was kids in it, and nobody was enforcing it, which I'm a little bitter about, but I know. And so, but yeah, they actually had wristbands. You had to get a wristband at check-in, and I'm assuming the wristband changed, daily.
Yeah.
The resort that I stayed at in Tucson back in June on my way home from San Diego did the same thing. They asked me, how many days you're going to be here? 2 days? Okay, here's 2 wristbands so that you can, if you need to shower, you can take one off and you can have another one. Or if I have to go to replacement, I have to go to the front desk. And if I'm laying by the pool and I don't have a wristband on, because at the resort in Tucson, there's no gate access for the general pool area. It's just off the lobby of the main area. The adult only pool, which is 18 and up, that was secured by a key access. So you had to have a key. Your key had to be programmed to let you into that if you were over 18. And so we can control that access as best as possible. So protection of assets. Okay, so these are belongings of our guests. We also, so the one thing that we do have are safety deposit boxes. Most hotels, do you guys have safety deposit boxes at your front desk? Okay, so most hotels have that. Does anybody not know how a safety deposit box works? Okay, have y'all ever seen like in the movies when somebody goes to the bank and the banker has to go with them and use their key and they have their own key and there's usually some mysterious document inside that's gonna solve the mystery,
That's pretty old.
right? What's that?
That's pretty old though. Usually now rooms now have like their own like safety.
Yeah, so most
box.
rooms do have safes in them, programmable safes. But some hotels typically still do have the safety deposit boxes behind the front desk, okay? And so it's essentially the same thing as you would see in the movies with the banks, okay? And so it's a
Big block.
right here, and there's 2 keyholes on every single one. You need the hotel key to open this one, and you need the guest key at the same time. And then you can pull the little drawer out and figure out what was in there, and remove either that or add to it. And so we typically would have a card that the guest has to sign, their name. You put maybe their room number on there. They have to sign it. And there's also, for every time they open that box and close that box, there's a signature and the date of when that happened. So if someone's there for a week, then if they want to go and add something to their safety deposit box behind the front desk, we want to document that we opened it during this time, this is what was added, this is what was taken out, this is the content, and then you sign off on it and you lock it back up and they have their key again. If they lose that key, you have to drill the lock out and this box is no longer good anymore. And so it's really important the guest does not lose that key. You typically also need to see identification every single time. You should ask for identification, even if it's the same person and you know that person. To cover yourself legally, just ask for an ID. I just want to verify your ID. Same thing as someone come up and asked for a key at the front desk. Even if you know that person and you checked them in 20 minutes ago, you still want to get a validation of identification for that. Yes, Alberta.
So the hotels that have the safes in the rooms already, they also have safety deposit box because some don't fit.
Typically, they usually do, but they're not very big. They're very small. I mean, basically as wide as my wallet.
Yep.
So they're pretty long and narrow.
Okay.
They're not typically a large size. Now there might be some that might be like part of the box that maybe these bottom 2 are a little bit bigger for larger items, but they're not very large.
Okay, so for the most part, the hotels are now offering those safes.
Yeah, most hotels will have a safe either in the closet or within like the cabinet of the dresser or near the desk area. They'll have that safe. And that safe is programmable. So as it's open, you enter there's directions, there's instructions. You enter your little 4-digit code, and you close it, you do your 4-digit code, and you enter that one more time, and it registers that. And then that way when you put it in again, it'll open the safe within the thing. Whenever we travel internationally, I typically will put my passport in the safe in the room if I'm not going to need it during the day. And so often, yeah, sometimes like if I'm gonna go and if I feel like I'm gonna be, carded or whatever, I'm gonna go have a drink somewhere, I'll make sure I have that with me so I have the evidence of my, I'll have the evidence of my birth date. Not the evidence of my birth, because I am the evidence of my birth. But the evidence of my birth date, because sometimes even just using my Texas driver's license would not be sufficient in an international setting. And so I would need that passport. But typically I would leave that. My biggest fear behind that is that I'm going to leave it in the safe. And I'm going to check out of the hotel and I'm not going to have my passport. So I typically am one that most often will keep it on me in a very specific place, and so I always know.
So what happens if an American or someone loses their passport in another country?
If you lose your passport in another country, you need to find the nearest U.S. embassy, and you can process it. We had a woman when we went to Italy. Her passport was stolen out of her bag when we were in Verona, because she had her bag out on the counter and she was paying for something, and in that split second her passport was gone. So she had to get on a train with one of our tour guides up to Milan so that she could get to the U.S. Embassy. It was the closest U.S. Embassy for her to go and get a replacement passport.
I know that's scary.
It's gotta be,
You have to
absolutely.
verify who you are.
Yeah. Absolutely. Right. If the front desk is ever being robbed or anything like that, there's typically some kind of procedures that are in place. There might be a silent alarm that you can trigger. There's a video on the next slide, and we're gonna watch it at the end, so we don't have to interrupt the recording here. But it's basically an example of a hotel front desk person, doing the right thing in a robbery situation. She gives the money and then she lays down on the ground and waits for that person to leave. At the La Quinta, we had to make periodic drops into the safe. So we never had more than $100 in our cash drawer. We always had to balance it out to $100 in our cash drawer. So if somebody came up and they wanted to pay for their room and tax with cash, and they did, and I took like $200, I would make a deposit directly into our time-operated safe that the manager opens in the morning. And so that way, if that's the case, if we did ever get robbed, thankfully that never happened, but if we ever did, the least that we're going to be out is $100. Or the most we're going to be out is $100. Okay. We want to make sure that there's any kind of well-documented procedures, and that these procedures are updated and these procedures are communicated. So whether it's during a monthly staff meeting, maybe it's during your monthly employee appreciation event. There's all these different things opportunities that we have to present these different policies and procedures. How many of you that are in hotels understand what your actual procedures are for safety? Okay, good. That's really important, because often, my sister, she works in HR, and she was telling me that a lot of times when people are in an emergency situation, if something is not, that's why we do drills for emergencies. Because when you're in an emergency situation, your brain is fried and it's going in all these different directions. And she was saying there were stories about when people, firefighters need to get people out of a burning building, and they go up to the office space and the person is literally just sitting at their desk. They just don't know what to do. They're just in this kind of panic mode and they just freeze. And so if you have these security drills and you know exactly and you're keeping up with it, it becomes second nature, so that when that emergency does happen, your body just goes into, oh, this is what I need to do kind of a mode, instead of, oh my gosh, what do I do? What do I grab? And then you're just overwhelmed.
Every hotel should have like an emergency procedures for it.
Absolutely, they should. And then also, we notify, or we have all this information for our guests. So it's posted usually by every elevator. This is where the emergency exits are. This is where you are, and this is how you get to the closest emergency exit. Don't use the elevators. We want you to use the stairs, right? And so the wedding that I did on Saturday, there's 3 elevators, and there's all of a sudden 80 guests that want to get down to the second floor, and so there was a little bit of a congestion and whatnot. And this older lady, she was like, "Are there stairs around here?" And I said, "You know what, ma'am? I'm sorry, I don't work for the hotel. I'm just here as the day of coordinator." I was like, "But let's look." And she was like looking at me like, "Where am I going?" I'm like, "I'm going right to the elevator," because I know there's a little floor plan of where the stairs are. Ultimately, the stairs that we found were not a re-entry stair. They were only stairs used for emergency purposes that exited out to the street. So I was like, well, you can't use these stairs. Well, by the time we walked back to the elevator, everything was cleared up and they used the elevator to go down. I'm like, we just got a little extra steps in. Yes.
We had a drill here last year. And the facilities coordinator from the college failed us from the class, because she said, y'all didn't pass, y'all need to be more coordinated. I'm like, whoa, wait. All we were instructed was go down the stairs and meet us outside. You didn't say where, outside, there's outside here, outside there,
Right.
there's stairs here, there's stairs here. You know, it's like, which stairs? So there's, like, half the class was down here, outside, and the other half was down here, and they're like, oh, well, you all fell because not everybody was together. Well, no, you failed to tell us which staircase and where to meet.
Right,
You just
and
said
that's
meet
why
outside.
that's why we do drills. That's exactly why we do drills. So that it's okay to say that you failed a drill.
Yeah.
It's not okay to say that you failed it in an emergency situation. So that's why we do that's why it's okay. Let me burst some people's bubble real quick. It's okay to fail. Okay, it is okay to fail at something. That just means it's going to get you better for the next time. So if someone says you fail at something, don't take that as a personal attack that you are a horrible human being. It's just that this is what we need to identify. So now we identify that lapse in, okay, we didn't say what set of stairs. We didn't say this. You know, we did do an emergency drill for an active shooter drill. And of course, in that instance, you would not necessarily go out in there, right? And I sat in my office with the light turned off, and I knew that Frances was like the designated active shooter in our building, and she was going to go around and double check to make sure every single door was locked. And so I'm sitting in my office with the light turned off, and I hear this rattle on the door handle, and I'm just like, I mean, it was no more than 5 minutes, but it seemed like an eternity to me, you know? And so I can't imagine what it would be like in an actual situation like that. But that's why we do the drills. That's why we practice it, okay? Can we necessarily do an emergency drill with our guests at the hotel? We can't. Most cruise ships, at least I've been told, I've never been on a cruise, but most cruise ships, don't they do a drill before, like when you first get on board? Nobody's been on a cruise in here?
They just tell you where to go. Like, they assign you.
Okay, because I think I've seen other friends that they're literally out there with their life vests standing next to, I guess, the boat that they need to get on or whatever, like an actual drill. And so we've seen with cruise ships lately that those types of drills could come in handy. And so we want to make sure that they're ongoing, it's constantly updated. We can utilize the local police department, the local fire department to help us. They can come in and do an inspection of our building and say, okay, how do we develop our safety and security plan? So get those local authorities involved because they can definitely help, okay? You might need to actually train people how to use a fire extinguisher. And most fire extinguishers that are training fire extinguishers, they don't actually have the chemical inside them. They're usually just compressed gas so that it comes out at the same force, but you're not wasting that chemical ingredient that's going to actually suppress the fire. Okay, and so oftentimes you'll see hopefully your housekeepers might be trained, or if people that are in a kitchen might be trained to actually utilize that. Because what good is that fire extinguisher if nobody knows how to use it? Right? And also if you're not familiar with it. So you think that fire extinguisher and you're like, oh, that's just a little fire extinguisher. And then you go to pick that thing up and you don't realize how heavy that is. Okay? And so all these things are things that you should be doing to make sure that your team is ready to react in an emergency situation. Because in the hotel, it's our responsibility as the team members of the hotel, as the leadership of the hotel, it's our responsibility to make sure that we get the guests out safe. And it's also our responsibility to be the ones that's not running around screaming, oh my God, we're going to die, okay? We're the ones that are trying to calm people down. We have to be that face, because otherwise if we're freaking out, oh my gosh, if I see my hotel staff freaking out, and I'm a guest at the hotel, I'm going to start freaking out because I'm like, you guys don't know what you're doing. And so that's going to cause panic in me. And so we as hotel people need to make sure that our employees are trained and they are up with it. Now, it takes time. And of course, you know, we don't necessarily always have the time to do it. But, you know, during a employee appreciation event during the month, like if we have a luncheon every month, or if we, you know, have stand-up meetings with our team members, little kind of within our departments, you can just say, okay, every department, as the manager, you are going to go in and you're going to talk about fire safety this week. And so every single time you need to have a one-on-one, or you have a big meeting with your group, or have one-on-one with each one of your employees and talk to them about our fire safety plan and keep that safety up, okay? Of course, if we are located in a hurricane area, if we're located where tornadoes, so there's no one set rules of safety programs. If I'm in an area, although San Antonio has had earthquakes before, I was in an earthquake one time. I was laying in bed, it was like 2 o'clock in the morning. I woke up and I literally felt like somebody was just shaking my bed. And I thought there was like a ghost at the end of my bed. And I was just like, what? And then I was driving, I was cleaning pools at the time, that was my job. And I was driving my truck and then I was heard the radio, like there was a earthquake so far away from San Antonio, but the shock was felt here. And I was like, I'm an earthquake survivor. I was like, this is awesome. I was young and stupid back then. But yeah, so I mean, if we don't necessarily experience earthquakes like California experienced earthquakes, so we don't necessarily need to have as detailed of a plan of earthquake safety in our plans here. We have tornadoes, we have flooding, okay? How many of y'all ever experienced where San Antonio floods? Has anybody never experienced San Antonio flooding before? Okay, so y'all know where like downtown with a 35 splits, it goes up and then it goes down, like Main Street and San Pedro over by Sac in that area. There's often times when we get enough rain that lower area essentially just becomes a river.
Mm-hmm.
Like it completely floods.
It would be like Vance Jackson area, Huebner.
Yeah, Vance Jackson, Huebner area.
Like
Any
downhill area that's actually very
It's like
Yeah.
Laredo, when we get heavy rains in Laredo, all of that.
anywhere.
The whole
Yeah.
parking lot of the mall floods.
And so San Antonio definitely has done some to mitigate the effects of flooding as far as drainage and things like that. But there's not any kind of, when we have those what we call 100-year floods, there's no way to really plan for that. When we had I remember the last one that we had, my mom decided to go furniture shopping. My brother-in-law will never let her live that down. We were out looking for couches and we had to push people out of the water on the access road of 35. And that was I wasn't working at Rio Cibolo Ranch at the time, but the pavilion where we had a lot of events, there was from the floor of the pavilion, 23 feet up was the water line of where the creek had risen to. The creek was about a quarter of a mile away and about like 50 steps down. So that's how much rain and how much water was in that area. So we do get flooding occasionally. Do you think after Hurricane Harvey, those hotels in Houston are probably updating their hurricane and their rain and their flooding, their flood safety programs?
From that, when all this rain is hitting them this.
Right. Now they have the tropical storms again. So now hopefully they're maybe a little bit better prepared for these situations and potential flooding because of the past experiences that they had. Okay, yes ma'am.
I just had a question. So like in hurricanes, I know they evacuate guests, but who's like there, like the GM and...
That's a very good question. I have no
I
idea.
always wanted to know, I don't know.
I
Like
don't
not the
know.
employees, right? So it would be like the general manager and the higher up people that would be...
I don't know. I can ask. Yeah.
Just thought I wanted to-
I'll be at the Hotel Association board meeting later on today, after my meeting with my advisor. So I'll ask that question because they always give me like 5 minutes to ask or to talk about updates at St. Philip's, and so I'll ask that question.
For hurricanes, it's not something that just comes out of nowhere.
Right, you're
So
aware
should
of
not
it.
be taken by surprise. for a
True, but like you think about though, like with Hurricane Harvey, how it just sat over Houston and dumped all that water. So you have that flooding as an additional emergency situation than just the hurricane
hurricane. So
itself.
when you start hearing those indications, you should start preparing from the beginning.
Oh, absolutely, and that's where your preparation comes in. That's where your safety plan comes into play. You are already implementing those
Something like a flash
procedures.
flood that just comes out of nowhere.
Right.
And you can only do so much for something like that.
Right, absolutely. Yes, ma'am. Did you have? Yeah.
Oh, I was just saying, like, what do you do if you have, like, you know, when they have hurricanes, some people don't want to leave. So what do you do if guests that don't want to leave? Like, they just go, I'm gonna ride it out right here.
I mean, I don't know, I've never been in that situation, but I would assume that, you know, if you're like a larger hotel, then you would have some kind of policy or procedure in place where, if we're a large hotel and we have large banquet space, we might gather people away from, all the windows that could be affected by the high winds or debris flying, and we might have them. We might even have, if we're in a area that's already prone to hurricanes, the construction of our building might be designed to withstand a certain amount of force. Maybe the glass within our building and our windows would be used or would be designed to withstand debris flying and things like that. And so there are things that you can do. I'm not aware of anything specifically because I've never been in that situation before.
A friend of mine is in Florida and his parents and they refused to leave, not this. But last he was like, he ended up moving there. He was like, I was there for weeks cleaning out the house, and it was like the last minute they finally agreed to get out. They got like on the last airplane out, and he's like, they just refused to leave the house. They were like, we're gonna ride it out.
And you'll get people like that though.
Yeah.
There's people like that that just refuse
Well,
to
they're
leave there.
expecting a shift a lot of times, because hurricanes do shift.
They do.
And then
You don't
once
have to
they
tell me
realize
twice.
that it's not gonna change,
Right.
at that point, the panic is like, we can't get out of here.
So oftentimes, in addition to the map that's over by the elevator, there should be a map like within each guest room to identify where the closest exit is. And so that's for emergency situations. We also have an all-call, like an intercom system that we can actually get on in the hotel that will actually broadcast throughout the hotel if there's a case of emergency. Rather than us having to try to call every single guest room, we can get on that intercom system and we can broadcast a message that way as well. Of course, we have our fire alarms that will help prevent, will help notify guests. A lot of the fire alarms will flash for people who are, especially in ADA rooms, for people who are hearing impaired. There's all these different things that we can do in order to ensure that we communicate the sense of emergency.
The Alamo College is pretty good about sending out text messages.
Yeah, they absolutely are. Yeah, they sure do. If you don't get of course, whenever we get one, everybody's phone starts blowing up in the room. But typically, if you're part of the Alamo Colleges, on your ACES, and I think you go into your student tab, you can sign up for the notifications and the alerts, and it'll tell you when there's emergency situations, or if campus is closed for the day because of flooding or because of bad weather, ice or whatever. So that is something that they definitely are good about.
I was sacked for an active shooter. Literally, as soon as they closed the campus down, like a minute later, I got it on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Texas Tech does, and they also send the parents. Like my daughter was at Texas Tech, and so when something was happening, we would also get a text or a phone call telling us what was going on, so then we know to reach out to her and make sure she was okay.
So I wonder if, this might be a question I can ask my advisory committee when we meet next month, but I wonder if we have guests' cell phone numbers in our property management system, if everything is digitalized, if we can also communicate in that regard as well as part of our alert system.
If they opt in for the messages, yes.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what that process is. Yes.
I've looked at the, on the back of the door when you're putting your stuff in, you look at that. But typically, how do they tell guests like where to go? Like when I'm at work, if there's a fire, everyone's going to go to the southeast corner of the building. You're going to stay there. We're going to take your call. So does the hotel do that? Like we had a fire in one of our hotels out in Cibolo, and I just wondered, like, did they have to evacuate? And then how did the guests know where to go?
So that would be part of their plan. Go ahead.
There's a special team in the hotel, like in every single hotel for like fire drills or, whatever the case might be.
Yeah.
Which, at least in my hotel, so like emergency SWAT. Basically what you have to do is evacuate people from obviously not bring yourself in danger.
Right.
But basically just do as much as you can.
So you don't just say, hey, all guests report down to the front of that.
No, you have to go to the hallway and start knocking like, hey, everyone out. If a guest, ends up dying because of that, it's basically their fault.
And you tell them where to go? Or do you just have to leave?
You just go to the front, just exit through the exit doors. There are several of them in the hotel.
And people will be waiting down there to tell them what to do?
Just outside of the hotel, as far as the parking lots, basically.
Do y'all actually go in the rooms or just knock?
Knock. We just have to knock as hard as we can. Just let them know to.
So if someone's a heavy sleeper, they're just SOL.
If you die or something, if you die there, where we have to walk in is going to be the accessible room. for ADA rooms.
Okay.
Those are the ones that we do. have
People
to
that
go
need
in.
assistance.
Yeah.
Okay, I was wondering about something, how do they know where to go? How do they let them know?
Yeah, so key for any kind of success in a security or safety situation is communication. So again, keeping up with make sure your staff know what the procedures are and what their role and their responsibility is, what is required of them. Also communicating that with the guests as well when there is a sense of emergency. We want to make sure that everybody is aware when we have those emergency situations, okay? Again, we want to make sure that our employees and our team members of our hotels know how to communicate with the guests during an emergency. And yelling and screaming, we're all going to die, is not, bless you, is not the way we communicate with our guests. Everyone for themselves, get yourselves out, okay? Not the way that we respond to an emergency situation, okay? We want to make sure that for any kind of security thing, we want to make sure that there's a record for it. So we have that logbook for guest complaints and guest service issues and things like that. We have a security record of when things, if a car was broken into, what part of the parking lot was it in? Was it off in the corner where there's no street lights in a kind of a darker corner of the parking lot? Was it right up next to the front? When did the guest report it? What time? Were the police called? Hopefully the police were called to make a police report. All those different things. We want to make a security record of who was involved, what was missing or what was damaged, and what was the result of that. If there's a police report, we might get the police report number, and actually put it into that file so that we can always reference and maybe follow up what happened with that. It's important for us to know what is happening. Just like our comment cards can help us identify where we have lapses in our guest service, these types of things can help us where we can identify where we have issues. If we have every single day, it seems like we have a car broken into in our parking lot, then we might have an issue. We might want to address that and adjust our security procedures, okay? Of course, we're never going to mention the guest room number out loud. We've talked about that before. Anytime someone wants a key from for their guest room, we want to make sure that they actually ask for identification. Okay. The room attendants, they should not allow anybody to come into the rooms. When I was in San Francisco, I went in and my room attendant was cleaning my room, and I just had to go in real quick to change my sunglasses. But don't judge me. And so I had to go get a different pair of sunglasses, and I walked in, and I knocked, of course, before I just barge in, but I knocked, and I said hello, and I acknowledged, went over to the desk, and she asked me, she's like, can do you mind coming over here real quick and using your room key in the door? Even though the door is propped open, I could use it, and it would show her and validate to her that this is actually my guest room. Okay, and so I was like, wow, this is exactly what you should have done. Thank you. Now, had she not done that, I probably would have thought twice about it, but the fact that she did do it made me realize that this hotel was practicing great security measures. Yes.
The Hilton in Dallas, when I was there this summer, I had relinquished, Lula had put the room under my name.
Okay.
And so I was responsible for that room. And when I relinquished the room, that I didn't stay in there, and I said, can you please remove my name from there? They never removed my name from it. So they had given me a big old piñata that I didn't want, and another lady wanted it. I said, tell housekeeper to give it to you. So that, no, they're asking for you to go to the front desk and give me access because they won't let me go in.
Yeah, absolutely. So that security, that guest room security is serious, okay? And we want to make sure people are following those procedures. It protects us as a hotel, okay? Let's see. If the guest needs to get access to their room, like their key is locked in their room and their ID is also in their room, when the hotel management or the hotel maintenance person follows them up, they need to verify their identification before they access that room before they just give them access to that room, okay? Oftentimes when somebody, how many of y'all ever been in a hotel where you can charge to your room? Like you're in the restaurant and you're gonna charge your meal to the room, okay? You have to put your name, print your name, the room number, and sign it. And then when I actually take the guest check back to the computer, I put in that room number and the name will auto-populate. And I wanna make sure that that name is the same on the receipt as it shows in my computer in my property management system. Because sometimes a guest will, well, if they're in room 1135, they might write something weird and maybe it looks like 1136. And so you put 1136 and the names do not match. We can't charge that to that room, okay? And so hopefully the guest hasn't left yet, but if they have, then there's ways that we can look up their information based on their names. That's why they print their name and not just sign it, because we all know some people's signatures, you don't even look like what their name even says. Yes, ma'am.
At least because I'm working PBS, I get calls from the restaurant to verify, even if there's a secondary name, the first primary person always pops up and they just verify. They're like, are they really in this room? I'm like, yes, go ahead, fill that room.
Yeah. Absolutely. We always want to make sure, okay? If a housekeeper ever finds a key, should they just put it on their cart?
No.
No, they should take it to the front desk. A lot of housekeeping carts nowadays actually even have lock boxes where they can just slip the keys into it and it protects that key. So if a guest leaves the key in the room, then they also are going to, confiscate that key and return it back to the front desk. The digital key, I thought this was really interesting. This hotel, Embassy Suites I stayed up in Austin, I forgot something in the refrigerator in my room. And I'd already checked out. I actually stopped by the front desk and I actually physically checked out, turned in my keys, but I still had my digital key. And so I went back to the front desk and I said, hey, I forgot something in the refrigerator. Can I just get an extra key? And I was like, I don't think my digital key works anymore. And she was like, oh yeah, it's valid until noon. And I was like, that's weird. I'm checking out at 8 o'clock in the morning. And what if at like 3 hours later, I'm like, you know what? I'm still kind of tired. Let me go back and take a nap. My digital key still works. And so the housekeeper goes in. I've checked out. Housekeeper goes, cleans that room. I come back at 11. I could easily access that room, go take a nap. And then the guest checks in thinking that the room is vacant ready. And it looks like the bed has been slept in. Or you're in the bed still. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's yeah. So, but yeah, so those keys, that's why when we relinquish those keys.
She probably shouldn't have told you that.
She probably should not have told me that, that's true. Security with payment cards, okay? So as we're accepting credit card payments, on that little magnetic strip and that little chip, there's so much personal information, address, name, social security number, birthday, anything that's on your credit card account that verifies your identity, their ability to use that card is on there. And so we have to have procedures in place to protect that digital information for the guest. We also want to make sure that the people that are processing our credit cards, our front desk agents, that they are not also abusing that information. Okay? There have been stories of front desk agents who will start copying down credit card information. Okay? We want to make sure that there's policies in place for that. Usually, only people who need to have access to those computers. At the front desk, there's typically a sign-in, and when you walk away from that front desk, you log out. You should log out, okay? Because if you leave that open and somebody just happens to walk by and now they have access to all this information that maybe they should not have access to. So we have to have procedures to make sure and policies in place to make sure that we're protecting that information as well, okay? I'm not going to go into too much detail about this because you'll get this in the legal issues course about the payment card industry and all the standards that are involved with that. You'll go into much more depth with that in the legal issues course, okay? So different types of identity theft, dumpster diving, skimming, change of address. So if we have information like folios that have credit card numbers, typically you'll see on a folio where it's like 5235 and then it's just a bunch of X's before. So I don't have the entire credit card number on there. I just have the last four that I can verify with, okay? So it protects that credit card number if I print out a folio, if I print out a receipt. So we want to make sure that we are not having that information accessible. If we have documents that are printed out, we need to make sure we shred those and not just throw them in the trash. So we control those as best as possible. So even controlling our areas where we have like where we have our dumpsters is also can be controlled so people don't access those, okay?
Are most hotels gonna have a shredder?
Oh yeah, most hotels are gonna have a shredder, absolutely. Absolutely. Or if not, there are services that you can send all your sensitive documents off and they will shred them, and there are services for that, okay? So the manager's role is your responsibility is to create the safety plan and then to teach your employees about it. That's your role as a manager, is to create that and then to teach your employees about that. Again, there's no one perfect one-size-fits-all safety plan for hotels because every hotel is different. The hotel we went to, Fairfield and Spring Hill, is a dual property. Fingers crossed we'll get to at least one hotel, if not maybe two more hotels in this class. And if we go then you can see that the hotels are set up differently. Even hotels that are the same brand of hotels can look a little bit different and have different layouts and things like that. And so I don't know if Michelle said this or not, or if I'm making this up, but did she say that all the ADA rooms were on one floor? Or she didn't hear that? No? Okay. Maybe not. Maybe I'm just making that up. Or maybe when I designed my hotel, I put all my ADA rooms on the one floor, so I know exactly where they all are. Yeah, right? So they're all in the same area. But yeah, anything that we have, we want to get involved with our local law enforcement, our police departments. Invite them over to our hotels. Invite them to come have breakfast in the morning, right? We have a complimentary breakfast, or we have a breakfast in the hotel. Have them come over to our hotel. Treat them to breakfast. It's not going to cost us much, right? Treat them to breakfast. Have them walk the property, give us any kind of suggestions of things that we can do to make our hotel more secure. Suggestions on fires, maybe have the fire people come over and look at our hotel to make sure. Of course, we're going to be keeping up with all of our codes and all of our fire extinguishers and all of our fire suppression systems, but we also want to look to see what is our evacuation plan appropriate, things like that. It's not going to cost you much, and it develops that great relationship with those law enforcement officers. So that if you do have an emergency, not that if you don't treat them to breakfast, they're going to drag their feet, okay? They're still probably going to respond, but at least they're a little bit more aware of your hotel if they've actually been there, okay? And you just develop that relationship. All right, let's see. So there's no two hotels that have the same security requirements. We have to implement those, design those and implement those for the hotel. All right, relations with local government, we've already talked about. Sometimes we might use off-duty police officers. We might use a security company, like a security contract service. Or we might have our own in-house security. So at the Sheraton Gunther, we had an in-house security, and they wore suits, and they just walked the properties. Okay, you might use off-duty police officers. One issue for using off-duty police officers is that they may be tired after working a really long shift. Okay, if they're coming right off of being, off-duty or whatever. It could be also a benefit for that is that they're more aware of who the local criminals are, who the repeat offenders are. And if they're using the off-duty police officer at your property, then they may be able to spot that person and realize right away that they don't belong there, okay? So there's a lot of different benefits for it. They also understand the law a little bit better, and they're trained to react in emergency situations and how to handle those. Although, you're hoping that the contract people that you're working with, the contract company you're working with, trains their employees to react the same way. So, and that at the same time, then if you have your own in-house security, you need to make sure that they are trained in the appropriate ways to handle emergency situations. Okay? All right. Let's scroll through using off-duty police officers. I just talked about this. The cons for doing that. The cons for one of them is they're more, off-duty police officers might be more trained for apprehension than prevention. Possibly. I don't know, depends on the situation, I guess it would assume. Let's see. The last little bit. All team members need to be instructed to be part of the emergency process and to effectively implement those emergency procedures. Let's go. All right, we're gonna breeze through this as well because this is all part that you're gonna get in the legal issues class, but I'm just gonna do a kind of brief high-level introduction for this. So we have, as a hotel, we have to provide reasonable care for our guests, which means we have to keep them safe. Okay, within like reasonable things that are within our control. We need to keep our guests safe. Foreseeability is the what? What do you think foreseeability is?
Predicting. If you foresee something coming, you should react to it.
Okay, so sorry, what did you say?
Predicting.
Like predicting something, right? If there's water on the floor, foreseeability says that somebody could slip and fall. I need to get that water cleaned up. Okay. Proximate cause means that this slip on the floor is the exact cause for my injury. Okay? The exact cause of my injury. Negligence means I saw that puddle of water and I didn't do anything about it. And then somebody slipped and fell and hurt themselves. And so that is negligence. Okay? Not actually responding, not looking at foreseeability and not correcting the situation. If I have a gap in my fence that accesses the outdoor pool and I don't fix that gap and somebody crawls in through that gap, hurts themselves in the pool, and then they sue the company because this is actually a legal case that happened. I don't remember the exact results of it, but they sued the case, they sued the hotel because they said that hole in the fence was an open invitation for me to come in. It was welcoming me to come in and enjoy your pool. People say some crazy things, okay? And so negligence, we want to make sure that we are not found negligent. We want to make sure that we are practicing that foreseeability and we're correcting things. So damages, there's two different kinds, compensatory and punitive. What's the root word for compensatory? Compensate. So compensatory damages are awarded to compensate somebody for their loss of like employment, loss of life, loss of something, loss of enjoyment of life. So if I get hurt in some situation and I, lose my voice permanently and I love to sing and that brings joy to my life, I can sue somebody for loss of joy to my life because I can no longer sing. As long as it is proximate cause to how I got hurt, like the direct reason of why result of me getting hurt. Okay. Punitive, what's the root word from punitive? Punish. Okay. So punitive are typically exorbitant fees that are assessed on top of compensatory damages to deter people from making the same mistake. Right? Well, the McDonald's person that got burnt by the coffee, if there wasn't punitive damages that went above and beyond the compensatory damages, then what, other than just not wanting to hurt our fellow human beings, what is going to encourage people not to be more careful about their hot beverages? Assessing those punitive damages is going to do that. We're not going to get into this. We'll get into that into your legal issues class. Okay, so here we go. True or false? A lodging property security program should be continually reviewed and updated. Good, that is true. Security program should focus on prevention. Good, that is true. Remember, security, we're talking about the assets, protection of our assets. That's preventing things from being damaged or stolen. Security information for employees should be tailored to fit the needs of their specific job. True or false? That is true. Okay. So if there's different security or safety things that are needed, does the front desk need to know how to change a light bulb, the proper way to change a light bulb? Probably not. Maintenance and housekeeping might need to know that, but not necessarily the front office as far as safety is concerned. Now, is it good to have a knowledge of how to use a ladder? Absolutely. But is it necessary for their job function? Probably not. And so you might even look at the departments and figure out how people are going to use these different things so you can make sure they're aware of what they need to do. Electronic locks can keep track of every entry and unauthorized entry attempt. True. Good. Which of the following is a common hotel security procedure? Require identification before issuing a room key. Never mention a guest room number allowed, or issue e-cards to all hotel managers and supervisors. Good. It's A and B. Even when the law permits security officers to make a citizen's arrest, they should only do so when? If that police officer cannot come in a reasonable time. Okay. Which of the following statements regarding off-duty police officers is false? Which one is false?
B.
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 What do you think? 1, 2, 3, or 4? A, B, C, or D?
2.
What do you think? Show me your fingers.
I'm gonna say D.
B.
Okay, most people. It is B. Remember, they are more toward apprehension. That's what they talk about. The be more toward apprehension than prevention. Okay. A hotel's contract security company may or should be responsible for supervising who? So who should the hotel's contract security company responsible for supervising? Should they responsible for the contract company? Should they be responsible for the in-house security team?
No.
No. The hotel is responsible for that. The security director? No. The hotel is responsible for that. The contract security employees? Yes. Those ones that are under them. That's who they should be responsible for. So if we have an issue as a hotel, if we have a contract with a security company and we have an issue with how they're handling it, we need to go to that security company, that contract company, and say, this is what's happening. We need to fix this issue. Okay. Each room attendant is issued one electric key that is coded to provide access to the rooms they are assigned to clean. What is those room keys called? This is what the housekeepers have. Okay. B, that's the section master. It's only going to open the rooms to the specific rooms that housekeeper needs access to. Okay. Compensatory damages are awarded what? Okay, it's for pain and suffering. Remember, it's compensate. We're compensating for pain and suffering. Which of the following factors helps in determining foreseeability at a given property? Foreseeability. Good. Prior incidents of that type of thing happening and the crime rate in the surrounding community. That's foreseeability, that we can kind of plan for that.